Good to see you, Joe. Okay, so tonight is going to be the last class before Passover, before Pesach, and we're going to try to get through the rest of the Haggadah as much as we can cover, and main thing to give a little appreciation for what we're going to be doing on Wednesday night. We should all have a safe Pesach wherever we're going to be, and we should be have a meaningful Seder. It's been changed for every human being in this world. The Seder is definitely, everyone without fail has changed their plans, but that's what's meant to be. So the first thing is you have to realize that no one's alone. No one in this world's alone. One of the most painful thoughts to think about is that people are sitting alone for a Seder, and we all have to know that none of us have the company we expected for the Seder, but God is with every one of us. That's what the Seder is all about. He redeemed us from Egypt. He's going to redeem us again. This is the essence, faith of the Jewish person, and he's absolutely with every one of us in the Seder. And we have that capacity. I'm not saying it's easy, but we have that capacity to make this year's Seder more powerful than any Seder we ever went through in our lives. Because it's not about the outside company. It's about us and appreciating what God did for us, taking us out of Egypt, and He's watching over us every day. I want to tell you one story. The story was related by a wedding. There was a wedding of bride and groom who were both orphans. They both lost both parents. Imagine what it was like watching this chuppah where there was no parent to walk down either the bride or the groom. All four parents had passed away. And someone spoke by the wedding, and he said over a story that gave everyone a big lift. The story happened, there was a great Rebbe, Hasidic Rebbe, the Belzer Rebbe, who came from Europe. He survived the war, and he came right after, or right during World War II to Israel. And the first Friday night he was there, he was surrounded by his Hasidim who all survived the war. They were all survivors. Everyone there had lost relatives. No one had emerged unscathed. And he said over a question, he said that we're going to say on Passover, we're going to talk about the crossing of the sea and the splitting of the sea. And the very famous words we say are, Oz Yashir Moshe, then Moses will sing. And the wording is the tense is wrong. Oz Yashir Moshe, then Moses sang. It happened in the past, right? Moses sang when the sea split. Moses sang. What does it mean he will sing? Oz Yashir. Yashir is a future tense. The Talmud asked the question. The Talmud says that this shows us that Techiyas Lesin, that one day the revival of the dead will happen, and this is a hint to it in the Torah, that the revival of the dead will happen. So the Belzer Rebbe asked, why in the world does it have to say that over here? It's a funny place to say it. They just witnessed one of the greatest episodes in the history of the world. The splitting of the sea, the Egyptian army was drowned, the Jews were saved. So they sang because they're saved. What do you have to tell me now? That they're gonna sing in the future, they'll be, just talk about the fact that they're saved and they're singing now. So the Belzer Rebbe said, we have a tradition that before the Jews left the Exodus from Egypt, during the plague of darkness, 4/5 of the Jewish people died. It's a tradition we have. Not all of them really wanted to leave Egypt. Some of them wanted to stay. They weren't all so righteous, whatever the reasons were. But you imagine what it was like. There was 1/5 of the Jewish people left. And imagine what the people, they're crossing the sea and they're saved. But not one person there didn't lose a relative. They all felt the pain. And the Torah said, at that point, we want you to know that there will be a time of the revival of the dead. There'll be a time when everyone will be reunited with their loved ones. And the Belzer Rebbe said, this is the first week after the Holocaust, he's in Israel with all these survivors, that you have to know we're going to make a Tish, we're going to make Shabbos, we're going to celebrate Shabbos, but there's going to be a time we'll all be reunited. And this person who spoke by this wedding of this bride and groom was trying to give the encouragement to the bride and groom that even though their parents weren't there for the wedding, but there'll be a time that they'll be reunited with their parents. And in the same vein, this Seder this year is not simple for anyone. There's not one person in the world who's being with the people they thought they'd be with. Everyone to different degrees, but everyone's got changes in their life that weren't supposed to be. And in a way, it's bittersweet. But you have to know that it's been directed that way by God. It didn't happen by chance. It didn't happen because the virus just popped on us. It was meant to be that way. And the Jewish people are so strong that we can find that connection to God in this darkness and hopefully make this Seder meaningful and relating to Him. Now we're going to try to run through, some of the rest of the Seder. Obviously, in the space of the time we have, we're not going to get through everything, but before that, I'm just going to repeat what we said last night. These are very important things to remember, and I want to just remind everyone, we have to sell the chametz. Not only you can't eat chametz on Pesach, starting Wednesday morning before Passover, you cannot eat chametz. By 10:23 in Ben Salem, you got to stop eating chametz on Passover, on Wednesday, I'm sorry, and you have to sell your chametz. You can't own it to a non-Jew by 11:42 Wednesday morning. For me, if I'm help facilitating the sale, I don't charge it, but I ask you to send me back the document ASAP because I have to. This year, for me, it's also different. Normally, I sit down with the guy myself and I sell it myself and I shake hands with him. And this year, I'm not doing any of that. I'm giving it off to a rabbi in Lakewood, let him deal with it. So if anyone didn't send the document and you're gonna, please send it right away because I have to forward it. I do not want to deal with it myself this year. On Wednesday morning, there's something called Erev Tavshilin. And you may not have ever heard those words, but I'm just repeat it again from last night because it is very important. The idea is that we really can't cook on Yontif, on Friday, for Shabbos. The sages allowed it to be done if we started cooking before the holiday for Shabbos. So it's not complicated. It really isn't. All you got to do is take a piece of matzah, one matzah, and take either a hard-boiled egg or a piece of fish, anything cooked, and you open the prayer book. It's there. It's called Erev Tavshilin. Or you open the Passover Maser, or probably it's in the Haggadah, and you just say there's a blessing and some words in English. This Erev will permit me to now cook and bake and light candles on Yontif on Friday for Shabbos. You put it away in the fridge, and on Shabbos you take it out and eat it. It's not complicated, but it's very important to do that Wednesday as early as you can when you remember. Wednesday after midday, Wednesday afternoon, as Passover approaches, it has like a little bit of a status of a holiday. So we take a haircut or shave, laundry before midday on Wednesday. Once Wednesday midday comes, it's already like a little bit of a holiday. And again, nightfall Wednesday is a little late. We moved the clock already. So nightfall Wednesday is going to be at 8:22 in Ben Salem. I know it's not easy, but you can't begin your Seder before 8:22. It's as we've mentioned many times, it's the wrong day of the year. It's just not Pesach yet. So we've got to begin the Seder at not before 8:22. Once nightfall comes, you should begin right away. We don't delay it. But I always encourage everyone, if you can, take a nap sometime on Wednesday. It's a late night. Take a nap. Nothing wrong. Try to sleep Wednesday afternoon. Get a half-hour nap, an hour nap, whatever it is. You'll be refreshed, and by when time the Seder starts, you'll have the strength to do it. Okay, so last night we went through the 4 questions. We went through the beginning of the Seder, and we got up to V'hi Shamda. And you're going to forgive me, I don't have the Haggadahs where everyone has the same page, but in the Haggadah there's a statement. We even hold the cup of wine when we say it, and we talk about the V'hi Shamda, that this promise that God gave us, that He'll redeem us, has stayed with our people for eternity. It has protected us throughout the ages, over and over, whether it was Paro in Egypt, whether it was Sancherib from the Assyrians, whether it was the Babylonians, whether it was the Greeks, whether it was the Persians, whether it was the Crusades, whether it was the Nazis, whether it was the fact that we've survived through all the persecutions, through all the centuries and thousands of years. That promise has protected us and continues to protect us to this minute with the Iranians and with the Hezbollah and with those black fanatics that did Union City. Whatever it is, it is something that's protected us throughout the ages and continues to protect us. Now, the Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes, maybe one of the most powerful things you'll ever hear in your life Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes that in his opinion, the greatest miracle that exists in this world, greater than splitting the sea, greater than the exodus from Egypt, greater than the manna that fell for the Jews in the desert, is the very survival of the Jewish people. The fact that all these great civilizations that arose have disappeared, and the only one left is the Jew. And Mark Twain said it in a beautiful way, and this is really something that is very, very powerful and something important to remember. When you say these words, V'hish Amda, that God's promise of survival is eternal, to remember that this is what has kept us alive, and to feel reassured that we're not going anywhere. The Jewish people will survive, and we will continue, and we're part of a most special people that has been the light throughout the world and will continue to be so. Next, I want to do is we have the 10 plagues. Now, we're going to go through the 10 plagues. I want to do is, I saw today, now some of you may have forgotten this, someone gave me a beautiful Haggadah that just came out from Rabbi Krohn, Pesach Krohn, and he has there a synopsis of various different sources that talk about how the plagues were related to what the Egyptian persecution was to Jewish people. So I'm just going to touch upon it now. I found it very moving. I'd like to share it with you. So the first plague we all know was blood. Now blood, why was the first plague that the Egyptian water changed to blood? Well, we know that the Egyptians threw Jewish babies into the river to die. So that's the first thing that happened, was the river turned into blood. The Egyptians refused to let the Jews bathe. They could no longer take a bath. Frogs, the plague of frogs, the Egyptians would wake the Jews at night, and now the frogs woke up the Egyptians at night. The Egyptians would force the Jews to collect all sorts of disgusting insects and bugs, and now these bad-smelling bugs came to the Egyptian homes. The Egyptians would scare the Jewish people with screams and sounds, and now the frogs made constant noise.
Ramifications for other issues.
If someone who had something going in the background there could mute themselves, it would be good. I don't know how to mute it, but I hear the background music there. Okay, lice. The Egyptians forced the Jewish people to sweep muddy streets and clear the fields. Now the lice came to the Egyptians in revenge. The Jews were working in hot conditions, sweaty, and all sorts of vermin came and clinged to their bodies. Now the Egyptians had lice all over their bodies. I found it very inspiring how just everything related to what they did to the Jews, they were getting paid back. Wild animals. The Jews were forced to catch wild animals for the Egyptians to have entertainment. You know how the Greeks used to make the Jews fight each other in stadiums with lions and fight. So now the Egyptians were subjected to wild animals. And the Egyptians came into Jewish homes like wild animals, attacking them and plundering them. Nowadays, they were subjected to wild animals. Pestilence. The Egyptians forced the Jews to take care not just of sheep and cattle like they were used to, was domesticated animals. They forced them to take care of wild horses, donkeys, mules, camels. Now the animals of the Egyptians were killed. The Egyptians harnessed plows around the necks of Jews and they made them work the fields. Now the Egyptians' animals died. And the Egyptians made the Jews work, and the Jews could not take care of their own animals, so now the Egyptians lost their animals. The next plague was boils. And boils came, the Egyptians beat the Jews and they had boils over their bodies. Now the Egyptian bodies were punished with boils. And they made the Jews work in the scorching sun, where they got boils on their skin. Now they got boils on their skin. Hail. The Egyptians would throw stones at the Jews and punish them at random. Now they were battered by stones also. The Egyptians would scream at the Jews and taunt them in loud voices. It sounds like the Nazis. Now the Egyptians heard all sorts of thunderous noises as the hail came down. And the Egyptians forced the Jews to sleep outdoors with their animals. Now the Egyptians had to bring the animals into their home to protect them from the hail. Locusts. The Egyptians would steal the fruits and vegetables of the Jews. Now their produce was all destroyed. Okay. Number 9, darkness. The Jews were forced to work into the night, going home late at night alone while it was dark. They had to get up early in the morning before it was light. Now the Egyptians had to live in darkness. and the Jews were locked in dark dungeons. Now the Egyptians were stuck in darkness in their own homes, like dungeons. I just want to mention one thing about the plague of darkness. There's something that's very special about the Jewish people that must be mentioned. It's unheard of in a human society that would go through the kind of torture that we went through and then have an opportunity where their tormentors are in total darkness and they could take anything from them, that they wouldn't do it. It's unheard of. Everyone, well, most of the people I'm speaking to here remember the blackout in New York around, around 40 years ago. Most of the guys here remember it. I remember it. It was, they call it laissez-faire. Take what you want. I remember a friend of mine telling me his father had a store in a certain neighborhood, and he called up the store, and the guy answered. He was in the middle of ransacking the store. He said, listen, you want, you can come, and you can take whatever you want also. And he hung up the phone. But it was chaos, total chaos. That was people stealing. But you imagine people being tormented. The Jews were tormented by Egyptians, tortured, stolen, and now they had the opportunity to take whatever they wanted from the Egyptians, and they didn't. It's unbelievable. And it's something, that quality of a Jewish person being honest. It's just something that, and finally, the death of the firstborn. The Jewish people are called Hashem's firstborn. Pharaoh tried to kill the Jews, so now the firstborn Egyptians got killed back. Okay, those are 10 plagues. I hope you enjoyed it. I personally found it very inspiring to hear this, how they relate to the torment they got. The next thing I'm going to jump to is the Dayenu song. Now, the Dayenu song, it's a very famous, beautiful song. We sing it, but the point of the song is to appreciate what we have in life. And this is something that we grow up with great gifts, and we sometimes don't appreciate them. A human being often will not appreciate the gift of being able to see until, God forbid, they may lose the sight. You cannot, just for a minute, just imagine if you go to a human being who can't see, go to a blind person and give them back their sight. Do you think that, and then tell them about all the complaints you have in life and the hardships. They would look at us like we're crazy. You have the gift that, but why is it that? So how could it be that we could ever kvetch and complain when we have such beautiful gifts, and we can hear, and we can smell, and we can feel, and we can think? But we grow up with it, so we take it for granted. Dayenu, the point of the song, is to take every single aspect of life and favor that God did for us and appreciate what we have. And I want to read to you, I know I emailed it out a week or two ago, but I think it's something that's very important. I plan to share it with my children by the Seder. They're not on the phone now, I hope. They're not on. And I think this is a very important, I just want to share it, even if you read it. We all feel like we're in very, very hard shape, hard circumstances now, quarantined and homebound, and we are. I'm not minimizing it at all. But someone sent an email out about a conversation that they were imagining between them and their grandparents about how hard life is now, being in quarantine or being locked down, and how hard their grandparents had it in Europe during the war. And this is what he wrote, and I want to share with you because I feel it relates exactly to the point of Dayenu. So this is a survivor of the war talking. What might he say if he was here today? You feel restricted where to go and how many people can congregate, but you can stay at home and be in your own bed. No bunker, no ghetto, no sleeping with animals in a barn. You can go to sleep at night and expect to find yourself and your family in the same place in the morning. You have food in your home for weeks to survive. No rationing of a few grains of barley per person per day. You have water, fresh water to drink. You don't need to limit it. You don't have to boil it first. You can go to a bathroom and flush the toilet and don't need to use a pail in the corner with other people around. You can go outside to get food. There's food to be gotten. You can go outside to get food and you won't be shot dead if discovered. You can take a shower with soap, with warm water. You have a talis and tefillin. You can daven as long as you want, not be afraid of being discovered. You can walk out on your porch. You can take a Shabbos meal and have real chicken soup, not salt and water, real fish, challah, bread, soft, chewy, not hard and moldy. You can get more than one slice a day. You don't have to hide it from other people. You can think about plans for the next month or the next year and have a reasonable chance of keeping those plans. Heat, you can feel your fingers and your toes when you wake up. You have air conditioning. You don't feel suffocated by the heat and the stench. You have shoes, no holes, more than one pair. You have books to read, svarim to study. You can be locked up for weeks and months and not die of boredom. You have access to the outside world, to classes by phone and computer. You have a way to keep in touch with the outside world and know that there is an outside world. You can be in touch with family, see how they're doing. You never think that you may be the last one alive. If you need medicine, you can get them. You're planning to make a Seder with real wine, real matzah, shmura matzah. You have enough to last for the Seder for each person. You have chicken, you have meat, fresh vegetables, not moldy potatoes, potato peels with something inside, wine, grape juice. There's nothing to complain about. All is okay. So I feel that this is a extremely appropriate thought. And even if you read it, I feel something I would like to read it to my family during the Seder by Dayenu. I think it's something that's, unfortunately, we often take for granted the greatest things that we have in life. And the point of the Dayenu song is to sit back and appreciate what we do have and not take it for granted and not feel that we're being shorted. The essence of the Seder is three things. We're going to go on to the essence of the Seder. We're going to talk about three concepts that form the most important thing we must speak about. Pesach, the Paschal lamb, matzah, the matzah bread that we eat, and the maror. Pesach, the concept is a simple concept that the Jews are slaughtering the Paschal lamb, which is the deity of the Egyptians. We're denying any other deity in the world, our commitment to God. Matzah is the only food all year that we have today that's a Torah commandment to eat. And matzah represents the trust in God that we each have. The fact that the Jews left Egypt, went into the desert with no idea what they would eat. They didn't have time to even bake bread. And the idea that we live in a world where we only have trust in God. That's it. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. We don't know. The world is changing so rapidly, but trust in God is the essence of the Jew. And our deepest feelings of our heart come out as we eat the matzah and remember that God is watching over us, protecting us. And the maror, we remember the past. It's so important to connect to Jewish history. We're part of a chain of survival for thousands of years. We are important links, most important links in that chain. We're the ones who are alive today to continue that tradition. We then go on, we're going to have a beautiful meal. Now, you know, we have a little hollow. We sing praise of God before the meal, a little hollow praise of God after the meal. And the meal is not considered interruption because the meal is also praising God. We're celebrating, it's not just a feast, it's a feast of celebration of the Exodus of Egypt. And we're marking that celebration wherever we are, that we got freed from Pharaoh. We are now the servants of God, no longer the servants of a human being. We're going to have the rest of the Seder. I want to tell you one more story now that I feel is it's a beautiful story, maybe because I know one of the parties of the story personally. But I want to close it because I feel it's extremely apropos now. So the story goes like this. There's a Hasidus called Stolen Hasidim. And this story happened, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago. It's a very famous story. The Stolen schools in Jerusalem had not paid their teachers for many years. They were short, I'm going to throw out a number, $25,000. I don't know what the real number was, but they were behind in Israeli Shkolm. You pay, but they didn't have the money to pay the teachers for many months. A man named Rabbi Ackerman, who was involved with stolen, came for that Shabbos to Jerusalem. And he had been an American. He had moved to Israel. And the stolen Rebbe told him, I don't let you leave Jerusalem until you arrange $25,000, raise that money to pay our teachers. I can't go on like this. I must have the money raised. So Friday night, this Rabbi Ackerman is by the stolen Rebbe's tish, where you get to see them gather. And he's looking around at the crowd if he sees anyone walk in. And in walks an old neighbor of mine. I know the man personally. His name is Mr. Shron, Ruby Shron. And he walks in. Ruby Shron is a very famous, world famous philanthropist, a great person. He walks into the tish and Mr. Rabbi Ackerman sees him and runs over, says hello. He says, can I ask you a favor? I'd like to come visit you in your hotel tomorrow night. He said, fine, come. She comes with a few friends. They go after Shabbos. They're singing with him. They're telling him stories. They go on for an hour or two. Finally, Mr. Strong tells Rabbi Ackerman, he says, okay, now why do you really come to my hotel room? What are you here for? So he says, I'll tell you the truth. The Rebbe told me that they're behind $25,000. I can't leave Jerusalem until I raise the money. I need your help. I have to pay these teachers. They haven't been paid for months. Please, can you help us? So Mr. Shron tells him, I'll make you a deal. I'll give you X amount of dollars. And if you raise another $10,000 by tomorrow night, I'll give you another $10,000. I'll match it. Rabbi Ackerman is excited, but it's a challenge. And he runs. He runs from door to door, from phone to phone, and he's running all day around, literally just. And by the end of Sunday night, he runs into Mr. Shron's hotel room, and he pulls out his pockets and starts counting all the shekels and the dollars and the IOUs and the commitments, and they're sitting there counting it together. He made it. He made it to $10,000. So Mr. Shron said, no problem, $10,000. So then Mr. Shron tells him the following story. He says, you know why I did this for you? I said, no, I have no idea. So he said, now listen to this story. This is one of the most powerful stories I ever heard in my life. So Mr. Shron tells him, he said, when I was a boy getting married, I was penniless. I didn't have enough money to pay for my own wedding. You know, their Shrons are simple. They grew up like normal people. They're not from, I didn't have money to pay for the wedding. And it came the day of my wedding, and I didn't have a hat. I wanted a hat. I didn't have a suit. And I walked into a store, and I asked the store owner, Mr. Schwartz, can I buy a hat from you? I'm getting married tonight. I don't have the money to pay, but if you let me buy the hat on credit, I'll get gifts by my wedding. I'll come tomorrow and pay for it. And he let me buy the hat. Felt bad for me. I went to the next store and I got a suit. And I went to a third store and I bought a tie. And I put together the basic things I needed for my wedding on credit on people who trusted me that I would come back and pay them. And then he said, I was walking in the street and you were there. You, Rabbi Ackerman, were there. And everyone knew you were a very lively guy and you would dance a storm. And I came over to you and I said to you, would you do me a favor? I'm getting married tonight. Would you please come to my wedding and dance with me? I said, and you probably don't remember this story, which you didn't. But there in the middle of my wedding, while everyone was dancing, you came running in and you made that night into such a special night by coming and joining me for dancing. And I remember that favor. And because of that, I had to. And I just think about this. Think about, we're all caught up in the hardships that each of us have this year and the people we don't have, but I say that we want, and the things we don't have. But if we can try to think about other people, if we could try to pick up the phone in the next 2 days and reach out to the people and try to give them encouragement. I've been trying, and you can light up a person's day. You can just change everything. If we could all just try to spend the next couple of days trying to think about others, I think God will see that, and he will absolutely give us the attention that we want and the strength that we want. Hashem should help that each and every one of us have a beautiful Seder, a meaningful Seder, a Zisa Pesach, a Pesach that will be the holiday of redemption, and we should all be redeemed. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in person. And we should share. You should all be safe. You should all be healthy. I miss you all, and should have a great, happy Pesach. And should all be well.
Zisa Pesach, Rabbi.
Same to
Thank
you.
you.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.